And now, the Sleephawk Worldwide Podcast. Here are your hosts, Brandon Staten and Tyler Hansbrough.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sleephawk Worldwide Podcast. This is Sleep Dog with the Big Hawk.
What's up, everybody? It's the Big Hawk. Excited about doing this podcast with my guy, Sleep Dog. A lot of things we're going to cover. Football's right around the corner, and it's always a sign that fall's here. And I'm excited about this, Sleep. I'm pretty pumped up.
Damn sure don't feel like fall. And actually, there's only one thing we're going to cover. Well, actually, there's two things we're going to cover. First, we're going to cover this is our special edition, first hot off the press, Sleephawk Worldwide Fantasy Football Preview. I mean, we're going to break it down, okay? You want to win your league? Listen to what we're about to say. Do the opposite, but listen to what we're going to say, and then, you'll have an idea of what not to do. We got Sleep Dog coming to you here from Raleigh. We got Big Hawk over there, him and R2D2 coming at you. If you're watching us, that microphone, dude, looks like a little robot rolling around. Yeah, man. So we're gonna jump right into it, man. So here's our format. The problem with fantasy football is that everybody's got all their own nuanced rules, and they've created a monster with this shit. Everybody takes it way too seriously instead of just sticking to the basics. Okay, look, guys, this shit ain't for real. All right, you are not smarter than anybody else. If you win your league, it's because you got lucky. Okay, it's not because you got any sort of knowledge that somebody else doesn't have. So we're gonna keep it simple in our breakdown, dude. We are not going to the depths of the Earth's core to try to figure out who the hell you should draft in the 11th round with the 7th pick, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to keep it simple. We're going to go down the list of positions, and we're going to give you 3 very, very expert categories for each position. We're going to give you the MVP, okay? We'll tell you why and what we define that as. We're going to give you sleeper, maybe 1 or 2, 3, 5, I don't know. And then we're going to tell you who not to draft at every single position, okay? We're going to run through this, and by the time you're done, you can go, I don't know how many weeks is in your season, because that's another thing. It's however many weeks, it all depends. Oh, we can't start this week because of playoffs. Now there's 17 weeks in the regulars. When are we going to have our championship? I don't know. But this is your path to be undefeated right here. So you need to listen to this shit and listen closely, okay? So quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, flex, defense, kicker. Okay, we're not getting into 2 running backs. We're not getting into whether you're a 2 quarterback league. I don't give a shit if you're PPR. We're just talking players here, guys, all right? Good players are going to win championships in any sport, including the ones that are pretend, like fantasy football. So let's jump right into it, man. Everybody wants to know, Big Hawk, we ought to start at kickers to make everybody listen to the whole thing. That's what we ought to do. But we're not going to do that. We're going to start with quarterbacks, all right? Quarterback is definitely the most important position in football, right? Fantasy football is interesting, right? Because you got this contingency of people like, you going to draft a quarterback 1 overall? I don't know. There's a replacement value in there. But, quarterback on its own. This is not draft order, people, okay? Just the quarterback position, Big Hawk. Who's your MVP? Who's your sleeper? Who's only do not draft?
First of all, I want to say something about quarterbacks. Everybody in here that places a high value on quarterbacks is an absolute idiot, period. There's no question about it. If you want to put a high value and a high tag on a quarterback in fantasy football, go ahead and punch your season away. It is the most overrated position in fantasy football. I don't care what anybody says. If you put me and Sleep in the quarterback position on an NFL team, we're going to get you points. You can get points from anybody.
Yep.
And,
because I run for my life, and a yard is 1/10 of a point.
Yeah, exactly. And
I can get 10 yards.
You tell me I can't get 1 yard at the 1 yard line in field goal and like in the goal line stance. I'll get it.
You're gonna get it. Okay.
260.
I'm thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah, you're big. You probably could get it. Now me, I'll get a yard. Okay, but I ain't promising which direction that yard is gonna be. I don't know if it's gonna be towards my end zone or yours, but I'm gonna get a yard. Hell, I'm going to get 15 if you let me run backwards. Anyway, go ahead.
All right. So this is who I went with, and I think they're kind of flying under the radar. Now, I don't think they had as good of a rookie year as most people think, And I think a lot of people have a tendency to overlook Jacksonville because they've been so bad for so long. But I think Trevor Lawrence is going to turn the corner this year. And the reason why I put him as having a breakout year is because he's a guy who I think you can get a good value for in your draft and actually produce a lot of points. I think he's on the verge of being great. There's a reason he went number one overall. And I know these quarterbacks are just, if you have any type of arm, you're going to get drafted in the first round. And also I want to say, I really wanted to put Sam Howell in there. And I think Sam Howell has potential. It seems like Washington is trying to reload. They just got a new owner. Everyone's pumped up about the Commandos. And so, I think Sam Howell could be, a sleeper in there too. But when I put, the next question, the do not draft quarterback position, is Tua Tagovailoa. And the reason I say that is because this guy, when they ask him what he did in the offseason to improve his football game, you know what he said? He said he took jiu-jitsu. If that's not the dumbest answer I've heard in all of sport, you took jiu-jitsu, so you stopped playing your sport and you went to a whole different sport. And he said that he's going to learn how to take hits and falls. And to me, I'm just like, okay, well, did you put your pads on when you went to jiu-jitsu? Absolutely not. And for me, it wasn't I read the routes or, I worked on my coordination or, I was going through a lot of stuff because I got knocked out 2 times in a row and had one of the worst concussions in NFL history, and they continued to try and play me. It wasn't I was working on my health. Tua is a hit away from retirement, so that's why I put him on the do not draft. Hell, I would put him in a red flag. I would not have him on any of my teams. If I had 10 teams, he wouldn't make any of them. And so for my, let's see here, my MVP for the QB. Now, this one's tough because you're going to spend a lot of money for this guy, and he's got the rep. All right, he's got the talent. Okay, he's just about as prima donna as they come. That's my guy, Aaron Rodgers. My guy, Aaron Rodgers, he continues to throw frozen ropes across the field and pick apart defenses. That is my guy. And if he's available in the quarterback position, I'm going to take him every time. I love him.
Oh, man, dude. Guys, so if you will listen to this podcast, most of the time me and Big Hawk, we just fly in tandem. I mean, he tells me to jump off a bridge, I'm going to do it. And if I tell him to jump off a bridge, he's like, yeah, man, I'll think about it just to make me feel good about it. Now, all right, so let me recap what you got here because we're going to disagree on this shit. So you've got Aaron Rodgers MVP, you've got your sleepers Sam Howell, Trevor Lawrence, and you've got do not draft Tua Tagovailoa.
100%.
Essentially. Okay. Well, I didn't have Tua and on anything, but I disagree there because I think, look, I understand your justification because the best ability is availability, especially in football. So I could see him not, but dude, I think he might be a candidate, man. I think he's good. So, but let me go in the same order. So MVP, we're going to have some agreement there. Now remember, this is fantasy football. All right. Athletic quarterbacks are going to just run up the score for you if you can. Everybody knows that Pat Mahomes, if you can get him, is great. But you don't want to draft him number 1 overall, or maybe you do. We'll find out later. So I'm struggling in between Jalen Hurts, who I hate. I mean, I hate the Eagles, but I mean, dude, he's got weapons. He's on a good team. They got a good defense. Offense is going to have the ball. He's going to run. He's going to pass. He'll probably catch a touchdown for the season's over, right? So, he's going to run up the score, but I am 100% with you. I got it. When push comes to shove, Jalen Hurts is also a guy you're going to have to get pretty high. So in my eyes, it's like MVP, the most valuable player. The argument that doesn't usually hold in the actual sports does in fantasy, which is where do I get the most value, right? I'm not drafting Jalen Hurts 1 overall. I'm just thinking that he's that guy that when that first dude takes that leap and takes the quarterback, you might be able to get 2 or 3 more quarterbacks before somebody actually takes Hurts. I doubt it. But when push comes to shove, man, for me, I'm 100% with you. Except Trevor Lawrence is not a sleeper for me. He's an MVP for me. I think Trevor Lawrence is about to have an insane season. I think the Jags are a turnaround. I got some other Jags sprinkled into my other positions here that I'm going to break down, but I think Trevor Lawrence is a stud, and I think everybody's about to find out about it. Sleepers, okay? I think sleeper's Jordan Love. Everything we've seen of this guy, he's just been on it. And he's finally getting his opportunity, and his opportunity looks just a lot like A-Rod's opportunity did, which was you got to sit behind a dude that's great for a long time. And the dude just throws rockets. I mean, he's got such a strong arm. You know, it remains to be seen, of course. Like, he ain't got a lot around him, it doesn't seem like. But every time I've seen that dude take the field, he looks like he's got it under control. So I think he's a sleeper. And he's, you know, it's not like people don't know about him. Everybody's been waiting on it. So it just remains to be seen. And here's my interesting sleeper. It's Trey Lance. And I know you don't like Trey Lance and you don't like the 49ers. But I think Trey Lance, I've been reading a lot about him because I got a damn stud rookie card of this dude, so I got a vested interest, is by all accounts lighting it up in camp. But they've already anointed Brock Purdy as the starter, and Purdy looks like shit. And apparently Trey Lance is just out there setting the world on fire, dude. I'm watching highlights. This dude's throwing just balls on the numbers, okay? So he's a guy. You get him like last pick. He's your backup QB. All of a sudden, you know, Purdy goes out and throws 4 INTs 2 weeks in a row, insert Trey Lance, and you're back to a poor man's Jalen Hurts. So do not sleep on just stashing Trey Lance, all right? Do not draft. Do not, no matter what you do, draft Aaron Rodgers. Are you crazy? This is the Jets here, dude. All right, this guy ain't playing for the damn Packers anymore. He's got a bunch of rookies everywhere. This is the Jets. At the end of the day, it's the Jets. I love Aaron Rodgers. But fantasy-wise, ain't no way. I would touch him with a 10-foot pole, dude.
The Jets are a contender.
No way.
The Jets are a contender to win the Super Bowl. Period. Everybody's
a contender right now.
Hey, they're a couple. I mean, if they get an offensive line, it's done.
Yeah,
it's done. I'm telling you that. They've got weapons. They've got receivers. They didn't have that bad of a year last year, by the way. I mean, they weren't that far away from the playoffs, I don't think. I think the Jets could do it. You know, we'll see. I mean, the thing about the whole Trey Lance is Brock Purdy, he's going to get his opportunity. I mean, sleep. I don't know.
System QB, man.
They all say, hey, he looks great in camp. He looks great in camp. Hell, I would be saying he looks great in camp. I want to trade his ass because we got Brock Purdy in there.
But see, that's what I'm saying.
Get rid of
the Niners saying that. It's everybody else. The Niners are like, dude, he might be QB3. And everybody says, I don't understand what the Niners see because everybody in the media is watching this dude, and he's clearly better than everybody else. Now, I ain't been there. I ain't seen him. I don't know shit about football. But I watched the highlights, and it's like, dude, that's a pretty good pass.
I tell you this, Sleep Dog. San Francisco, contenders.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they
time.
contenders. And I called it last year. I thought they were going to win the whole thing. I thought they were going to win the whole thing.
They would have if Trey Lance hadn't got hurt.
How about that? He had his opportunity. He wasn't doing too good. I mean,
dude, he played one game in a monsoon. In the fourth snap of his second game, he broke his leg.
Hey, you know what? He didn't look good. I don't like. You know what? I don't care. You can gift wrap a turd. It still smells like shit. All right.
Yeah. Hey, man. I love it. Because I agree 100% on the 49ers. I think, honestly, if I had to sit here right now, this ain't a Super Bowl prediction show, but, dude, it's going to be tough to pick against the 49ers, man. They got offense, defense. They got guns everywhere.
I want to say this real quick since we're talking about teams. The one team I think is going to have a down year is the Bengals. And the reason I say that is because Burrow's hurt. He strained his calf. I tore my calf in China. And it took me about 2 months to fully heal. And that is, let me tell you, that's a serious injury. I can tell you from experience, he is not walking around. He is very uncomfortable, and he's not getting reps. I don't know if he signed the contract or they're in contract negotiations, but I think the Bengals are going to have a down year because of that. And I understand they have Jamar Chase, but I think with this injury, I think it puts their season in jeopardy.
That's actually an interesting call out because, having had an injury as an athlete like that, I think a lot of average Joes like me don't realize. I mean, if it's your plant foot, that's going to hurt. If it's your push foot, that's probably going to hurt worse. So that's one of those things, and they're going to nurse that shit back to health, man.
And the thing about that is, with a strained calf in a situation like that, is you run the risk of overcompensating on your good leg. and then injuring something else. People don't talk about that. Why would you sit somebody out if they think they could play? Well, they've got a lot invested in Burrow, and I think that with the strained calf, the calf has a tendency to give, and you would hate for him to tear an Achilles, because the Achilles injury puts you out for a whole year, and it's a kiss of death to a lot of athletes. I think Kobe Bryant, when you look at his career after he tore his Achilles, he was never the same. Even though he was aging. So if I'm the Bengals, I'm making sure Burrow is 100% and has no lingering issues with this calf strain before he's taking snaps. I can't reinforce that enough, because I think eventually they will continue to be contenders with him as a quarterback. What you don't want is for this injury to turn to something more serious and miss him for a significant portion going forward.
Sounds like Big Hawk doesn't want you to draft Joe Burrow either. But those are all good feedback. They got a lot of good weapons there, but that's a I can't say I disagree with that call there. Let's move on to running backs. Okay, this is probably the biggest juxtaposition between real life and fake life, fantasy life, that there could possibly be. Because running backs they're an enigma in both situations, right? I mean, you get a stud and it's hard to lose. I mean, you pop you go back through the pantheon of fantasy football. If you got Adrian Peterson and didn't win a championship, something's wrong. If you had Chris Johnson back in the day, Sean Alexander, I don't know, all kinds of dudes. Names are escaping me, of course, right now, obviously. Todd Gurley, right? Trying to think of that dude that Jamal Anderson, a couple guys the Falcons had. I mean, just guys that were Steven Jackson. That's what I'm trying to think of. Like, there's some guys that were, for 1-2 seasons, were incredible. And then LaDainian Tomlinson, dude, I remember he was like 3, 4, 5 years. You had him, you could forget it, man. You ain't beat that dude.
Lynch.
Marshawn, right?
Beast.
Won a championship with Marshawn. But now it's a little different, right? Offenses are different, more pass heavy, right? We've got all this shit going on, running backs in real life. I'll start this time since you went last time on a key position. In my opinion, again, most valuable, meaning that we'll get to one of the last questions we'll ask is who we drafted and if you got the first pick overall. And that's not always the same as maybe who we got listed as, in my opinion, most valuable player. My most valuable running back is Nick Chubb, okay? You've got Kareem Hunt's out of there. Nick Chubb is an absolute workhorse. Okay. So he is still there's no restrictions on him anymore. He's the guy that's a 3-down back, and he's going to get 300 carries. So he's the guy, he's going to get the ball at the goal line. He's all this bullshit that sometimes happens with running backs and the dual threat backfields and all this sort of stuff. Like, that dude's going to play, and that dude's going to he's averaging 5 yards a carry his whole career. So he is your quintessential running back that pretty sure bet that if you wind up with him at running back, you're just going to get steady stream of points. So that's my MVP. My sleepers, and these are good, okay? These are real good. My sleepers, Javonte. Everybody's forgetting about damn Javonte. And apparently you got damn Sean Payton now, and I hate Russell Wilson as much as the next guy, but I mean, he's done pretty well over a period of time. So you got to figure with that weapon back in the backfield, Javonte's due for a bounce back after being injured. And Raheem Mostert, he was with the 49ers. I think he's a great quarterback. He's just crowded back there. And, of course, they brought McCaffrey in. And I don't care. Walter Payton ain't going to play right now behind McCaffrey. But Raheem Mostert's in Miami. So to your point, right, they got weapons. They got Tyreek Hill. They got Waddle. They got Gesicki, I think, is their tight end. So they got some offensive weapons. And Mostert can catch however the hell you say it. He can catch the ball and run the ball out of the backfield. I think he's going to be a candidate for a good, solid, cute RB2 maybe. Do not draft Jonathan Taylor. Don't get lured in by that shit, man. That guy was incredible for a year or two. What did I just say? How many running backs have we seen that were otherworldly for a season, 2 seasons, what have you, and then all of a sudden, poof, they're gone. Well, that's Jonathan Taylor. He got his contract, and that's it, man. And I like Jonathan Taylor, but I ain't touching the Colts. I ain't touching Jonathan Taylor, and that's it. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
I don't mind those sleep. I'm with you. Listen, I ain't touching a running back after a couple good years. And Jonathan Taylor was down for a significant part last year as well. The body takes a beating. So I'll start out. My breakouts. Listen, my breakouts, so I have two. I have Javonte Williams. I think that's a great call, Sleep. I think you said it. He set out last year with an ACL. He has significant time to recover. I do think Sean Payton's going to really help the Broncos. And I'm not the highest on Russell Wilson. I haven't always been the highest on Russell Wilson. I thought the defense won a lot of those championships for the Seahawks, to be quite honest. But I think he's a real deal. And I would be hesitant to let Russell throw the ball after watching him play QB last year. So I'd be handing that thing off a lot. And here's my other guy is Tony Pollard. And I know everyone said, man, this guy kind of went out last year. It's a breakout. No, what we're going to do is we're going to sit Ezekiel Elliott, make Tony Pollard the number one running back the whole year. I don't care. Like this guy can catch, he can get out of the backfield much better, much more mobile than Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, this guy, you talk about somebody who might be on their last leg. Ezekiel Elliott, I think he's aging not like wine. So we'll see. And let me see here. So my do not draft is Saquon Barkley. And the reason I said that is because this guy thought about sitting out the whole year. He got Daniel Jones as a QB. They just paid him a lot, so I think they're going to be throwing a lot. I'm just not as high on Saquon, and I understand he's been through some injuries. I think this whole contract negotiations and all this stuff's going to weigh on. And I'm not big on the Giants. I thought they had I thought they caught some luck last year for what they did. And then my MVP goes to a guy who I have on my team and the most talented offensive player to ever play in the NFL. Don't even think about – no, it's not Pat Holmes, guys. It's Christian McCaffrey. This guy was actually throwing touchdowns, running touchdowns, catching touchdowns. You name it. I mean, this guy, you put him on any position in offense. This guy could be an offensive tackle as well. I mean, this guy does it all. He's the best player in the NFL, Christian McCaffrey, who I have for my MVP and also on my team. I got him for a pretty good deal as well.
Anyway, we're going to have to pick this back up because we got our boy Ross on the sauce, hanging backstage because we're going to talk conference realignment. So we're going to jump into that with Ross, and this isn't for the show. We'll do that. Then we'll just come back and finish this up when that's done. Is that cool? I'm going to let him in. First test run. Got Ross on the sauce. So when we drop him in, he's in here live, sitting sideways. Ross, are you are you on a Motorola flip phone, Nokia? You playing Snake and then hopping in the pod,
What's better there?
Are
sideways like this?
No, that is sideways. Look, you're kind of like laying down there, Chief. Yeah, there we go. There it is.
Okay.
Golly,
get
what do you
more
have?
of your face.
Is this Bear Grylls?
Scoot back. Just bring the camera back a little bit. Are you holding it? Yeah, perfect. There you go.
So you're literally in the forest right now.
Yeah, I'm in
this is a train
Bridgeport,
wreck.
Michigan, behind a Baymont hotel.
Connected to their Wi-Fi?
What?
Yeah.
What are you doing out there, Ross? Are you on one of these ayahuasca trips or something?
Dude, man, it's very expensive to go to get hotel rooms in upper northern Michigan. So we just camp. It's a lot cheaper. We camp, and then we go see northern Michigan, then we drive back. We're on our way back right now. So,
nice.
Yeah. We're just on the side of the highway. I mean, look, here's a hotel right there.
Oh, nice.
Well, first time for everything. I mean, if you thought we weren't professional before, you definitely know it now. We got Ross here to give us the sauce. I think that's going to be the name of our little segment here, the sauce with Ross, about conference realignment, dude. Okay, we don't want to keep you here all day because we know you're camping, and I don't know much about what that entails, but as I can see, you're in the element. Never mind that there's I almost wonder whether or not you're just staying in that hotel and it just came out there by the woods right next to it to tell us you're the man of the wilderness. But anyway, conference realignment has been getting a lot of shit in the press and all this sort of stuff going on. And I don't even know where to begin with it, but a lot of people care, and they care a lot because it has to do with ACC. There's all these teams potentially flipping and going all these places. There's Bubba Cunningham, basically telling everybody that, hey, Florida State needs to chill, which I'm off. Anything Bubba says, I'm going to get behind it. So give us a quick rundown of you are plugged in here, all right? College football season is damn near upon us. and it's a Bravo show right now. So give us the lowdown, the sauce. All right.
So, I mean, how far do we go back? I mean, it's all started when Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12 for the SEC, which is going to happen, I think, next year. That kind of started things. And then USC and UCLA left the Pac-12 to go to the Big 10. So that kind of started this two major conference realignment situation. And then recently, the big news that just happened is Colorado jumped from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. Arizona State, Utah joined them. And then Washington and Oregon left the Pac-12 and jumped to the Big 10. So a lot of schools are moving around. Basically, there's 4 teams left in the Pac-12. They don't have a conference. You got Stanford, Cal, Washington State, Oregon State. They don't have a conference. They have 4 teams. And then the ACC is stuck in this grant of rights deal, which is where obviously UNC comes to play, where no team in the ACC can get out of the grant of rights until 2036. So they're stuck making a lot less money than the SEC teams and the Big Ten teams, but they're stuck in this like very antiquated ESPN TV deal, which drives everything. And so now you have teams like Florida State and Clemson, the main ones, who think they should be making a lot more money to be able to compete with the SEC teams and the Big Ten teams. They're not making that money, which gives them a huge disadvantage for the next 10, 15 years unless they can get out of the grant of rights and the ACC. That's kind of where the drama is locally in North Carolina and along the East Coast.
Man, that actually makes a lot of sense. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Tyler. Like I didn't know any of that shit. That's brilliant. So that's interesting. Go ahead, T. Sorry.
Yeah, Ross. So that's real brilliant, but you also have to give credit to the lawyer working for the ACC. Don't you think that he may have speculated down the line? He could have forecasted and said, "Hey, these schools may realign, so this is a way to keep the ACC intact." Yeah. But with that contract, my question is, can teams –
that's also brilliant.
So, yeah, great lawyer, by the way. Whoever did that, amazing job. So could other teams enter into that contract with the ACC? And would teams be willing to take that contract with that situation and kind of hold them hostage until that contract expires? So what I'm saying is I've heard a lot about Stanford and also Cal maybe joining the ACC. Rumors everywhere. If they do join, would they be held on that same contract? And would they join knowing what the situation is and how long they'd have to stay in the ACC, or would that be a deal breaker?
Yeah, we call that a multi-tiered question there, Tyler. So, yes, ABC. The grant of rights was created. The grant of rights was created because Maryland left. And so John Swofford and the lawyers got together and said, we can't have all this realignment. We don't want other teams leaving. So after Maryland left is when they all signed into this grant of rights, locking them in this TV deal with ESPN until 2036. So you're correct on that's why it was created, to stabilize the conference. And now it's kind of coming back to bite them in the ass. Yes, if Stanford and Cal were to join, they would sign into the grant of rights. They would just kind of be part of that deal moving forward. They would get a TV revenue split. They'd be part of the conference. But then think about this. The ACC would have to split their money in 2 more ways. So other teams would get less money if they add teams like Stanford and Cal. SMU was mentioned. And there's not much value. This is what happened in the last week or so. There's not much value in adding a Stanford and Cal because their football programs don't generate a lot of revenue. They're not a desirable property. Now, the San Francisco TV market, that is an attractive market, but is it really worth it to add these West Coast teams where it's going to be very expensive for a Duke or Carolina to have to fly out their field hockey team, fly out their volleyball team? That costs a lot of money if you do that a couple times a year for different sports teams. And Stanford and Cal just bring nothing to the table in terms of football. SMU sound kind of the same way. The issue is you want to add teams that bring value. So that's why Texas and Oklahoma jumped to the SEC. They bring a massive amount of value for the SEC. Same with USC. It's a big brand. They bring a lot of value to the Big Ten. Oregon's pretty good. Oregon and Washington are pretty big programs. I think they would want Carolina ahead of Oregon or Washington, but Carolina can't get out of the grant of rights. Now, UNC is in a good spot when this grant of rights ends or whenever they figure out a way to get out of it, maybe say in 10 years, because UNC, like Clemson and Florida State, are desirable football programs. And what makes UNC attractive and Virginia attractive is that the SEC and the Big Ten have no TV, no big teams in North Carolina or Virginia. They don't have any teams in North Carolina or Virginia. So it makes getting that TV markets in Charlotte and Raleigh and Richmond and other parts of Virginia attractive to add money to that deal with ESPN or Fox Sports.
So let's say that this all makes a lot of sense. And I think the average fan doesn't quite realize just how football programs work, including me to a large extent, right? Like, they just don't understand where the money really is. Somebody, the average casual fan, is going to look at Washington and be like, what? But, to your point, there's geography, there's alumni, there's all these things. There's a lot of money going around in football. I think there's a lot of people that still think Carolina's basketball team generates more revenue than their football. There's those things that I think average folks have to contend with. So it's really, really interesting. And to me, it's like, obviously Florida State and Clemson are the two biggest football assets, really two biggest assets in the ACC. And so if we lose them, right, this is an interesting fight. Right. I never really thought about it because I think people like me, I'm like, all right, Stanford, I get the fact that they're on the West Coast and we are the Atlantic Coast Conference. Like, it's kind of stupid. But those two teams, you're kind of like, all right, this is cool. Like, I know who they are. Like, they have good players and good programs. Like, it'd be fun to watch those games, but it's so much more complicated than that. And is there any way, I guess, that you see some deal getting struck where the ACC, maybe it's not Clemson, but do you see them bringing in other people? And do you see, because there is a buyout in this, right? It's an expensive ass buyout.
Yeah. So to leave ACC right now, it's almost like $500 million to leave when you include the TV rights in there, because the ACC owns the TV rights. Mm-hmm. So even if Florida State were to buy out of the ACC, there's an exit fee. Even if Florida State were to leave, the ACC still owns their TV rights. So what conference is going to take Florida State if they can't get the TV rights to Florida State? The ACC would still own them until 2000. That's the weird thing. It's complicated. It's very complicated. And Stanford, it makes sense because Stanford's academics are strong. They have a really good women's soccer team, really good volleyball team, swimming. Like, they're a really good athletic program, but they don't have the eyeballs for football. Like, you don't have packed bars getting hyped to watch Stanford football take on mentality. So they're like, we're better than the ACC is what a team like Florida State and Clemson's thinking. Like, we want to get to the SEC where we can make as much money as Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Florida, those teams, and compete at that level. So they're kind of thinking their football is just bigger than the ACC. And so they want to get out and start making better money so they can recruit, they can get coaches, they can build facilities. It's all an arm race. It's an arms race for coaches and facilities, and they have to have TV money and the bigger revenue share in order to make that happen.
Hey, Ross, real quick, do you see any teams leaving the ACC and doing a buyout?
Not in the next 5 years, because the exit fee does decrease every year. Like, every year you stay in longer, it gets cheaper to leave. So I say in 5 years, it could happen.
And there it goes. We lost Ross.
I think that's just bad service. We'll bring him right back.
Yeah, we'll get Ross back here if we can. He is in the middle of nowhere.
Hey, guys, this is a great conversation, though.
It really
I've got
is.
a few more questions.
I do too.
To dodge off of them.
All right, I'm going to let him back in. Yeah, it looked like I was worried you might have run into a serial killer or something out there. All right, so you were saying –
We're back. Hey, so –
yeah, go ahead. Pick up.
Yeah, I mean, Florida State's trying to get outside investments from a private equity firm to figure out if they need to get, $200 million, $300 million. They've talked to private equity firms to figure out the money. It's crazy. That's never happened before. I mean, people even think about the Saudis, and that's how crazy it's gotten, to where Florida State and Clemson, Florida State mostly is trying to figure out a way to get out. And that's going to take a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of lawyers. And it does decrease over time, Tyler, where 10 years, the ACC might have been dissolved. It might be dissolved in 2030 maybe, where it's cheaper and it just makes more sense for teams to get out. I'll be interested to see if they add anybody. I don't know what program or what school would be interesting, would make sense to add. I always thought a West Virginia would make sense.
What about Connecticut?
Maybe, but they don't have a – yeah, I mean, Connecticut makes sense, but I don't think Connecticut football really drives things. basketball, it makes tons of sense. But I don't think Connecticut football.
So that was going to be my next question. Who do you think is most likely? Do you think the ACC stays put as it is, or do you think there's going to be a couple other schools that may come in? Because to me, just looking at Stanford and California, they don't make sense. It's the West Coast, and neither one of them are football powerhouses. I know Stanford has a lot of great athletic programs, but let's be honest. A lot of those programs aren't money-generating programs, so this is a money issue, and they aren't going to just come in here because they have good programs. You got to make money.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to look to the lesser conferences like the AAC. I just don't see a Sun Belt team being like. Look, I mean, I think App State's got a great football program. They just don't have the money. Like, they don't have the national brand. Connecticut. Schools like Houston, East Carolina, Tulane, like that's Cincinnati. Those are the next level of schools you look to. Like Cincinnati kind of makes sense, right? They're kind of like the next tier below. Your boy Wes Miller there.
So I would think that maybe the ACC is kind of vulnerable because here, in about 10 years, they may be in a situation like the Pac-10, 4 teams. But if UNC were to leave, what conference most likely would you think they would join? The Big 10, Big 12, SEC? What do you think?
I think either the Big 10 or the SEC. I think academically and kind of what makes more sense would be the Big 10 academically, like kind of the prestige of like a Michigan and those schools. But, I mean, I think I would want the SEC. I think those road trips would be awesome. I think when push comes to shove in 2036, like they'll have their pick. And I think they'll be very attractive in the SEC or the Big Ten. I think it makes sense with South Carolina and Tennessee. Those are natural rivalries. Pretty easy road trips for UNC fans too. So I think the SEC makes a lot more sense geographically. I think academically, the Big Ten makes sense.
And I have a follow-up on that, okay? Which is, why isn't UNC in this conversation too? And to kind of just flesh that out a little bit, I'm trying to be really, truly unbiased here and not ask this as a Carolina stan, right? But you got Florida State, you got Clemson, and I do think that Carolina is the third biggest football program in the kind. I don't really think the other programs are all that close. I might be missing one, and I might be wrong about that. Like, actually, Boston College kind of strikes me as a football program that kind of like is the centerpiece, right? But aside from that, and you mentioned Virginia and that sort of stuff, like why isn't UNC in the same camp as Clemson and Florida State?
Yeah, I think it's kind of this old school tradition. Like UNC is the ACC, and I think Bubba is trying to be a leader and trying to hold things together, and not trying to step out and kind of bark like Florida. I mean, he used that term. He said Florida State needs to quit barking. So I think they're taking their time. I think there's tons of back channel conversations happening about, in 5 years, what it's going to look like. In 10 years, are we positioned well? So I think they're trying to be a good teammate in the ACC and holding it together. And look, the revenue is going to be lower than the SEC and the Big Ten, so they're going to have to deal with it. It's just kind of the nature of it. This grant of rights, it sucks, but it holds things together, and it's hard to get out of. Like, if people could leave, like Florida State would have left yet if they could leave. Yeah. They just can't. So they're going to have to deal with it for a little while longer. So we're going to have another discussion in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. It'll be very interesting. I mean, this stuff it's almost like Succession. It's like so much drama, so much backroom dealings. TV's involved, CEOs are involved, donors are involved, presidents, athletic directors. It's super complicated and super interesting too.
It definitely is, man. And they're going to have to get creative at the end of the day. This all revolves around a TV contract, and media's changing, and with NIL and all that sort of stuff. Like, I think it's just going to boil down to, the ACC is going to have to get creative outside of the current construct. Right. And I think, it's hard to match like a multi-billion-dollar or however much, TV deal that the SEC and Big Ten and those guys have. But, I think that's where, what it's all going to boil down to is how things are going to look in the future, are basically just, not constrained to these massive TV deals, because revenue comes from everywhere now. So it's really a fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was going to let Ross go anyway. That was awesome conversation. Ross is in the middle of Narnia out there. It looks like he is off the side of I-85 at a Ramada, a Red Roof Inn, just off in the woods where the creek might be a ditch. But anyway, fascinating conversation. We'll bring him back on when he gets back to civilization.
He might be using their Wi-Fi.
Yeah, he said he was using their Wi-Fi. He probably had the wrong room
I wonder
number.
if he's getting the buffet.
Yeah, he could be. I mean, it is. I think it's 12:16, so the continental breakfast probably just ended, and also, it's right around checkout time. So, however he was hacking into their Wi-Fi, they probably are like, "Hey, dude, you're supposed to be checked out. Late checkouts at a motel of 6. All right. So, anyway, thank you to Ross for joining us. We will do our best to salvage that video. But fascinating stuff, man. And this is to wrap up that conversation, T. This is honestly, I feel sort of vindicated because remember when this whole shit went down with Liv in the PGA Tour, I warned the NCAA. I was like, you got to watch out because this stuff is different. And I heard Ross mention that even there's crazy rumors going around about even maybe Saudis getting involved in this sort of stuff, right? And it's not the Saudi thing here. It's the fact that there are things that are challenging norms financially in sports now that I think these traditional sort of constructs just aren't ready for. And I admire UNC for what they're trying to do. But a question I can't help but ask myself is UNC going to wind up looking like Rory McIlroy in this whole situation? When something else evolves and into a bigger, better product with more money flowing around, and I don't know the answer to that. I'm not smart enough.
I just want to say something real quick. I don't think I really like what Bubba said, and I don't think it's right that Florida State gets a bigger chunk. You should have looked at the contract and not signed it if you didn't.
Hell yeah,
like it.
Deal's a deal, man.
Yeah, and that is on the contract. But I don't think that, it's going to be interesting because I don't think UNC has made a hard stance to stay in the ACC. I think they see what's on the horizon, and I think that Bubba's doing everything to try to see what's going to put UNC in the best possible position because these conferences, like Ross mentioned, they might not be around in 10 years. And we've talked about this. With all these conference realignment, we don't know what's going to happen. And also, I've said this before, I just don't think conferences are going to be around in 10 years. I don't think it's really all that feasible. The way that college has turned into just looking at, revenue, and it's become more of a business in college athletics. So I just do not see conferences being around in 10 years.
I think, dude, our favorite sports structure is what makes most sense here in college sports, and that's like professional soccer. The way that they do it makes so much sense to me. Why is Division I, Division II, Division III a thing? Have your fifth. I don't know how how's Premier League, whatever Euro League shit works, but I think I generally understand that your best teams play in the best league. Now, there's some turnover, right? Because kids graduate and they go out. This is not theoretically a professional league, even though these guys generate some professional numbers, right? But the same thing is true in soccer, right? The guys that played on the team last year, like Messi was on some team last year and he ain't there this year. So it's they're not graduating, but there's still turnover. So why don't you take the top 50 teams? Of course, everybody, I'm sure that there's shit that people argue about how those teams are ranked and how all this stuff works. I get it. You're never going to have a perfect system. But you could consistently run your best teams out and then imagine what happened. And you don't have to do the same thing in basketball and football, right? And all these other sports. They could all have their own tiers. And imagine a league in which every game that gets played, there are fewer games, perhaps, and they don't have, but the quality of the games would be so much higher. Imagine the top 25 or just the top 50 is a league, and every game you play is and then your top half goes to a tournament. It doesn't even have to be 60-40. It solves a lot of problems, and you get in to that tournament by winning in the lower rungs, right? I don't know, man. There's just so many like common sense ways I feel like that could theoretically solve this problem. I don't know, man. It's just such a fascinating conversation.
The thing that sometimes makes college basketball in particular and college sports is a Cinderella story. And so I think it'd be hard to find that. But I do like what you're saying here, and would also force teams like a Duke look at their home schedule and the home strength of schedule before the ACC conference starts. I would argue that they play a very weak home schedule before conference play every year. And, it forced teams to play teams that are good, and their strength of schedule would definitely be tougher. But it's going to be interesting. You're right. They need some type of structure, and something's got to be right. Something's got to be figured. We got to figure something out. Because the ACC, I don't like the breakup. I like the rivalries. I like the teams playing against the teams. I love the conference. I love the ACC. I would hate for it to leave, but it doesn't look like, in years to come, this is going to be feasible for every team to stay around.
Yeah, I mean, the rivalry between Maryland and North Carolina was always awesome, right? It's not there anymore. But guess what? Like, new things occur. Like, it grows, it evolves, it becomes whatever. Like, nobody likes the change. But it's inevitable, and I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see how all this shakes down. Ross is plugged in, man. We're going to start having him on a lot more as we dig in, especially to college football, because, dude, that guy's forgotten more about college football than I've ever known in my life. I don't even know if I could. I couldn't name 5 facts that he doesn't know. So appreciate him joining us, and
love having him on.
Nice little pause here. We're going to hop back into our fantasy football. Wide receivers. We got a few positions left to go. Wide receivers is an interesting one, man. You can win leagues with wide receivers. Who is your MVP, your sleeper, you do not draft in the wide receiver position? Big Hawk.
Wide receivers, probably the most valuable position. Everybody's got to play him. Is a tight end a wide receiver? Yes. That might be, there's a reason. Tight ends, some leagues score tight ends. They give them extra points for catches. The TJ Hakamusuma guy for the Detroit Lions won me my fantasy league last year. Big fan of him. Underrated. Yeah, Hukumasama.
Or Hawkinson. There it is.
Yeah. But love that guy. But you know what? He didn't make any of my list. Listen, the breakout tight end is playing for the Tennessee Titans right now. And he's got a hell of a name on him, Sleep.
Okay.
His name is Chigoziem Okonuko.
Okay. And he's a tight end.
I sure hope so. Because when he was on the field, this is his second year, had a hard time making the field as a rookie. But listen, when he was on the field, he took 31% of the targets when he was on the field. This guy is just going to get every ball thrown at him when he does play. And so if you're in a points per possession league, get him. They say a comparison for him would be Jordan Reed. You guys remember Jordan Reed?
I remember Jordan Reed. Hell yeah.
Commandos
so
fan.
He'll be hurt pretty soon.
He'll have a great 3 games and sit out the rest of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And so my MVP goes to Travis Kelce. This guy is just the greatest tight end to ever play besides Rob Gronkowski. And, I don't think he's going to slow it down. He's got arguably the greatest quarterback, not named Tom Brady, to ever play the game. And do not draft. This guy is sitting on my fantasy bench right now, Zach Ertz. This guy is hurt right now, and he's getting ancient. He's a dinosaur. I just don't see – and also, let's not act like Kyle Murray. He's the one guy is going to just be slinging the ball at all the receivers. This guy's more of a run first. They had to give him a contract, and when they did, they put a clause in he's got to actually watch film and study players. So, I don't really like that one. So those are my 3. That's what I went with.
So we started at wide receiver, went tight end. So we'll skip wide receivers and we'll come back to those.
Did I do tight end?
Yeah. So we'll do tight ends first, Big Hawk. You got into this thing about how they're receivers too, and it was like a a tight end 2 movement.
Wow.
And so we really, elevated them to where they're supposed to be, and we're gonna skip wide receivers and we'll come back to them because they're fun to talk about too.
Wow.
Tight end, I'm with you. MVP Travis Kelce. I mean, that's your just rubber stamp. You can't argue it. Like he's the Gronk. He's was Tony Gonzalez. Those are the 2 guys, and Antonio Gates. I mean, he's on that level fantasy wise. You draft those guys. If you wind up with them on your team, the trick is, when do you draft them, right? The trick is, and tight end, they can play the flex, which I think is kind of where you were headed with the wide receiver thing. So, in my opinion, this is one of the most important positions to draft because you kind of have to get it right, because having a good tight end, there aren't many replacements, and you are, there aren't any alternatives. So there's only a very select group of guys. So, the guy that usually pulls the trigger is like, he either gets it just at the right time or he's too early. You're never too late to draft, Kelce, depending on who else is available. But here are my 2 sleepers in case some dude, just jumps in before you do. Gerald Everett, the Chargers, because he's got Justin Herbert throwing him the ball, and they got a good offense. And I think he's number 1 now. I think he was sharing some time, I think, with maybe Hunter Henry or Austin Hooper, somebody like that, for a year or so. And I think he's the guy now. And man, he's big, athletic dude. I've had him on my watch list last year, had him on my team, didn't really pan out. But I think he could be poised to break out. And here's another one that I think is interesting that, again, I was high on last year, didn't really produce as much as I wanted to, but it's Pat Freiermuth in Pittsburgh. Because they got a rookie quarterback who's going to start. I mean, Kenny Pickett is the guy. And I feel like a lot of times when you have a young quarterback, a tight end is a safe space for a young quarterback. And he's an athletic, big dude. If this guy, like, if you were in a room of 10,000 people and you said, hey, who's the tight end? You just look at this guy and be like, duh, right? So I think he's going to have a good season. They got Najee Harris. They've cleaned up they don't have Chase Claypool anymore, and I think they got rid of Claypool's gone, so yeah, got a couple other receivers in there. Anyway, I think he's going to be more involved. Do not draft Darren Waller. Okay, this guy was a big dude out of Oakland. Now he's with the Giants. Okay, guy's a freak athlete. I just ain't sold on a Daniel Jones. All right, and I don't think the Giants pretty good team. So I could be real wrong about that one. That's a bold take, I would imagine. He is up in among the top 5 or 6 on all the lists I've seen. I ain't touching him. Mm-hmm. I ain't reaching for him.
Interesting.
And he's one of those guys that, like, if you start seeing tight ends come off the board and he's there, you got to be like, damn, am I sure about this? And it's one of those situations where if you don't take him, he will blow up. And if you do take him, he will absolutely suck. So I know you guys know those guys that I'm talking about. You're sitting here looking at a dude and you're like, damn, man, like, I don't like that guy's name. I just don't like, 2 years ago, all right, I just ain't sold on it. But you know what? I'm going with my gut. I'm gonna skip over and dude just blows up. Or the opposite happens and you're like, all right, dude, I really don't want to do this, but shit, click. And then bam, he's done. Guys, 400 yards this year. So that's where we're at on tight ends. I mean, we're pretty tight alignment. It's a crapshoot after Kelce, if you ask me. So bouncing back up, wide receivers here. Here I'll go first on this one to make sure we don't wind up talking about kickers. Mm-hmm. So we've got MVP, my opinion, kind of the same deal now as Kelce. Justin Jefferson's best receiver in football. Best receiver in a long time. I think he is. You get Justin Jefferson, and you're going to get double-digit, probably 12-plus touchdowns, 1,600 yards. Dudes get 10 catches a game. He is that offense. And Kirk Cousins will throw it like Kirk Cousins or not. I mean, those guys are a seasoned pair. They played together. They know each other, and I think that's real important in the NFL. Sleepers. We talked about Trevor Lawrence earlier. Christian Kirk down in Jacksonville. Could have a big year. 1,000-plus touchdowns. yards and scoring touchdowns. He could be that kind of guy that goes for 1,200 yards and, 10 touchdowns and draft him 6th, 7th, 8th round. And Brandon Ayuk, that guy is super athletic, super talented. I think that they have a lot of weapons around. They got Kittle, they got Debo, they got McCaffrey. Whoever the hell the quarterback is going to have to throw to somebody, and these guys are going to throw the ball all day long. Because the biggest thing about San Francisco to me is they have such a great defense, is their offense is going to stay on the field a lot. So I think he's primed for a breakout. My do not draft, I'm going to give you 3 guys not to draft, just because, to me, they're so obvious. Devontae Adams, I ain't touching Devontae Adams. I'm not touching DeAndre Hopkins. And Chris Olave or whatever, out of New Orleans. I think he's a rookie, or maybe he's a second year. Bro, I think Derek Carr is a starter in New Orleans. No, I ain't touching him. And he's sort of like the heir apparent. I know Michael Thomas is still there, but people think he might have I ain't touching any of those guys. You shouldn't either.
All right, Sleep Dog. I agree with a lot of what you said. But I'll just say, for my breakout, who I'm going to have breaking out this year, I have Drake London for Atlanta. High draft pick last year, very athletic, versatile, wide receiver. I think he'll have a great year. But also I have Garrett Wilson for the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers, like we said, he's going to find him. He's going to get him the ball. This guy had a great year last year with an awful quarterback. So I think he'll improve this year with Aaron Rodgers. But the MVP for me, Tyreek Hill. This guy's one of the most diverse players in football. He could arguably be a running back as well. He's going to take a lot of kickoffs as well. Every year,
he'll be playing quarterback too. To hear you tell it, old Tua ain't gonna last long.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter who's throwing the ball. They're going to find Tyreek Hill, and they'll figure out how to get him the ball as well.
I agree.
But do not draft is Cooper Kupp, and the reason I said that is because you're going to spend a lot of money getting him because of the name and what he's done in the past. But he's had a few injuries. I know he's been injured all year. He was injured at the end of last year. Spent a significant time rehabbing. And also, the Rams are in a little bit of a rebuild, and it's going to be interesting to see what they have, what they're going to do with their squad. I know we'll be facing a lot of double coverage, so I wouldn't spend a lot of money on him. I think it is going to be a down year. So those are my 3 picks, Sleep.
Love them. Bold take there on Cooper Kupp. I like that because he's a guy that I think a lot of people are going to go in on. This is a good segue to the flex. So we got flex, defense, kickers. We're going to cruise through the defense and the kickers. We'll probably spend a little time on the flex position. And this is the best way I can describe how we approach this was all those, should I put this guy in at running back or wide receiver or tight end? This is sort of the honorable mention of our analysis is where a few guys that maybe didn't fit up into the upper echelon, but we wanted to give some consideration should go. So for me, in the flex, MVP, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that guy is legit. Realistically, I think that dude's going to be a lot of people's wide receiver 1. I think he's got the potential to be a all-pro player. Dude works hard. I just love that guy. So he's my guy, my sort of flex MVP. What you said about Garrett Wilson, I got him as a sleeper. Probably not even fair to have him as a sleeper anymore. I'm high on that guy too. Even though I said don't draft Aaron Rodgers, I'm thinking don't draft Aaron Rodgers in the sense that you think Aaron Rodgers is going to win MVP this year. That's my take. I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers is going to completely stink it up, and I think you're exactly right that with him throwing the ball to Garrett Wilson, could go one of 2 ways, man. He could, people study up on him, got some film, but he's going up in training camp. We see it on Hard Knocks against Sauce Gardner, and those guys are, I think those guys are great for each other. So I'm with you on that. I think Kenneth Walker, the third, running back out of Seattle, is a great sleeper candidate. And I expect big things out of Travis Etienne from Jacksonville too. So, those are my sort of, hey, man, take a flyer on these dudes. And you're probably going to have to do that kind of high with all of them, to be honest with you. And then do not draft Alvin Kamara. I just don't think, I think we have that's only my second Jet or Saint so far, but, not only is he, I don't know, did he get suspended or he's about to? But I just think even if he didn't, man, he's been underwhelming the last couple years, and he plays into this consistent theme of running backs. It just ain't that good anymore.
So the flex for me is just kind of those people that would you start, maybe have a breakout. For me, I usually do like to put a tight end in there. So I would say T.J. Hawkinson for Detroit. I think he's going to, he's one of those tight ends that can go off. He's going to get you some points, pretty consistent. But also I put Najee Harris in there for Pittsburgh. I think they're going to be handing the ball off to him a lot, especially with the young quarterback back there. But as far as, it's do not God, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. You just don't want to draft somebody that's going to suck. And this could be anybody. Like, who's the most overrated player? This is your shot to just say, hey, dude, this guy's going to be overrated as hell. Like Ezekiel Elliott? Ezekiel Elliott sucks, period. But also I'm going to say Mark Andrews for Baltimore, tight end, had a big year last year, put up some big numbers. I think Baltimore went out, got some receivers. I don't think they're going to be targeting him as much. Also, Lamar Jackson wasn't around for a lot of games, so they had Tyler Hunter in there, who, he wasn't the best passer. So, like you said, the tight ends are a safe space. And so I would kind of leave him off because I think for value, you're going to pay a lot for him because of what he did last year based off of that. But also I would say do not draft or do not even mess around with Ezekiel Elliott. I do not see him having a good year. Also,
I agree with you on Pollard, dude. They're dying to get that guy the ball.
So there you
Couldn't
go.
agree more. Let's speedball it through. We'll go to defense. I mean, actually defense is one of those things where there's conventional wisdom. I don't ever draft a defense till the last pick. I mean, I'd rather have a good kicker because defense is a matchup-based thing, and honestly, this is one of the most annoying parts, in my opinion, fantasy football. It's the luckiest shit you could possibly get. Team gets drugged 42-40, and they score 3 defensive touchdowns, and they lost. They gave up 1 million points and somehow still score 42 against you. That's just how it seems to work against me. I hate the Cowboys. Commanders fan, I hate them. But Dallas has pretty strong defense. They're my MVP. I think they're a good value. You're not going to, people are going to draft 49ers. They're going to draft Baltimore. They're going to draft the Steelers. They're going to draft all these sort of like perennial, teams. And I think Dallas has got, Michael Parsons and some of those guys on the edge. Like, I think they're a great defense and they're going to score some touchdowns and create some turnovers, and that's what you're looking for in a fantasy defense. My sleeper is Washington because they got a great, strong front seven. They're a sleeper because they don't tend to give up a lot of points. And all they really need to do is kind of turn the corner and maybe create some turnovers and maybe score some points every now and then. And who knows? So I think they're right in the lower middle of a lot of the charts, and I think they could be up in the top middle. I'm not saying these guys are going to be the Hogs or anything from the 80s, but somebody to watch. New culture, a lot of excitement. If the offense can put up some points and keep them off the field a little bit, there's your sleeper. Do not draft New England, New Orleans, or Tampa Bay. Period.
All right, Sleep. So I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. For I have MVP 49ers. 49ers, very solid, physical team. Always bring the defense. But for my sleeper, I always have Patriots. Bill Belichick is one of the best defensive coaches to ever exist, and I think he's one of the greatest at it. I always think he's great at finding what teams do and scouting against them. So I always put the Patriots. I always hold them to a high value because of him. But the do not draft would be Kansas City. I always think Kansas City is going to get into a scoring contest. You got to score when you play KC. So I always know that their defense is never going to hold a team, in the low points. So those are my 3.
Good take. Yeah, because Kansas City has a pretty good real defense, and it can be, a challenge. given the fact that you damn defense is going to be on the field all day because 3 plays, they go 88 yards for a touchdown on offense. So that's a good call. Kickers, God, this shit's boring, but damn if they don't score a lot of points, right? So it matters. This position matters, and some people will tell you you need to draft the guy. And I'm going to tell you that if you're going to make that jump, just draft Justin Tucker, dude. I mean, put this dude in, where's the Hall of Fame? Canton? Yeah, I mean, duh. This guy's locked in. Doesn't miss. That's the big thing, dude. Like, this dude can kick it from 70 or 7. It's going through the uprights. It's a big deal when you're talking about kickers these days. When your extra points are 80 yards or whatever the hell they are now, like, you need a dude that doesn't fucking miss. I mean, they might not score 100 points a game, but if the dude gets his opportunities and hits those field goals, you don't want to lose points in any position. And he helps you ensure you do that. I'm all in, I guess, on Jacksonville because Brandon McManus is the kicker in Jacksonville. I think their offense is a lot more higher power. Higher powered offense means higher power or more point totals in general, more opportunities for their kicker. And do not draft Greg Zuerlein, who is the Legatron from he's with the Jets now too. I just feel like the Jets are a trap. They're on Hard Knocks. They got Aaron Rodgers. They got all these young guys. I think I think they're a trap. He's outdoors now, so weather is different there in New York. I'd stay away. And I love, dude, I've had Zuerlein's been my guy for a lot. Hell, I picked him when he played for Dallas. Ain't doing it now.
Yeah, Sleep. Listen, I think they should get rid of kickers in fantasy. I'm just not the biggest.
Bayless take there.
Man.
Oh, in fantasy, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm with you there.
All right, so
it's stupid, but
yeah, it's still part of it. Listen, you want to value every point you can get. All right, that's what you do. You got to put the work in, find you a good kicker, and the best kicker is always Justin Tucker for the Ravens, MVP, no question. We agree. Do not draft Matt Gay for the Colts. I just can't take the Colts serious. I don't even know who their starting quarterback is. Jonathan Taylor's been hurt. They're going to be begging for points midseason. I don't think the kicker's going to get a lot of action because they're going to be so bad. The breakout is my guy, Young Ho Koo for Atlanta. I think Atlanta's going to have I think they're going to be an unbelievable contender this year. Joking. They're going to suck, but I think I really like Young Ho Koo. I really like his name. So I put him having a breakout, and hopefully he becomes the next Justin Tucker.
Oh, man. That's great, man. I actually think he's good. And that's the other thing, too, with kickers is sometimes like a bad team is a good kicker to have because they can't finish. They get in the red zone and they can't score, so dude's going to go get you 3. So, hey, man, there's a lot of ways I can go with this, but I ain't taking the bait, dude.
I almost put KC down there, but I realized, they're going to be going for it a lot on 4th. When you have Pat Mahomes, Kelsey, and, some of the weapons they do.
And Andy Reid, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, teams believe, but also, when you don't have the best offensive players, coach is just like, fucking kick it. See if we can't
take
get
what
lucky.
I can get. I ain't trying to get fired out here for going for it on 4th and 6 for my own 40. That's a good call. All right, so we'll get out of here. We'll get out of here on this one. You got the number 1 overall pick. Okay, who you taking?
Christian McCaffrey. I think he's the most versatile. Yeah. The only question I have, the only worry would be if he gets hurt. But Christian McCaffrey.
I mean, dude, caught a touchdown, ran for a touchdown, threw a touchdown in a single game last year. I mean, if he's healthy, and that's the thing. Here's the core tenet of fantasy football, guys. Don't overthink it. If you got the guy there and your first instinct is yes, then draft the guy, right? Take the players. If you start to waffle, man, you're gonna regret it. Just like a guy like McCaffrey, number 1, like don't get cute. Big Hog, Aaron Rodgers will be there later, or if he's not, there's plenty of replacements. These other guys that you think, Justin Jefferson would be kind of like my guy that I'd probably reach a little bit for. I have to blacklist all the guys in my fantasy league. I just thought of that, man. My damn fantasy league, these guys are going to be cheating by listening to all my, they're going to take my advice and use it against me, and then they're already going to know what I'm doing. But you can't go wrong with McCaffrey, dude. That guy's a stud, and he's one of those guys that if he's healthy, he's one of those guys we talked about earlier that you're going to win the league because nobody can touch you. You're going to get away with 2 or 3 bad players in any given week when he goes off. So, yeah, man, there you have it. fantasy football inaugural breakdown. I mean, it was not without its stops and starts here. It went probably a lot like my fantasy football season is going to go, which is not well. But you know where we stand. And I mean, I think we brought up a lot of good points. So you got anything else, Big Hawk? Fucker's frozen on the screen. Oh God, if you ain't watching this on YouTube, you need to subscribe to our channel because God, what a shit show. Y'all stay safe.